Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we'll make some cinnamon swirl bread. The dough in this recipe is exactly the same as the one I use for my panda mee, and I'll leave a link to that video in the top right corner here. The difference with this bread is that, as you can obviously see, it's got some curly whirly cinnamon stuff going on inside it. It's delicious and it's a super cool effect. I mean, look at it. Slap some Nutella on this bad boy and have it with your morning coffee. Perfect breakfast. And as always, you'll find a full recipe with all the details down in the description box. And all my recipes have metric and imperial units, so wherever you're from, you'll be able to make them. Now first things first, let's see what equipment we need. We'll need a bowl, scales, dough scraper, temperature probe, a brush and a loaf tin. This one with a lid is perfect for this recipe, and I'll leave a link in the description where you can find it. But a regular tin will also do. Now on to the ingredients. We'll need some strong white bread flour, some milk, soft butter, we'll need some yeast, salt, sugar, some potato starch or potato flour, some milk powder, and egg white mixed with a teaspoon of water. And for the cinnamon filling, we'll need some sugar, some cinnamon, and a bit of flour. All we need to do is mix these together, and you'll find the amounts in the description below. Now mix it up, leave it on the side, and let's begin making our dough. Right, my kitchen is around 19 degrees Celsius, so I want milk to be around 9.5 to 10 degrees. If your kitchen is warmer, you want your milk to be cooler. You can click the link in the top right corner to learn all about dough temperature control. Right, let's get on with this. In a bowl, add your milk, then the yeast, the sugar, in with the salt, then add your potato starch and the milk powder. And then grab a spatula or whisk and give it all a good mix. You might have noticed we're not adding the butter yet. That's coming a little bit later. Now in with the flour. Adding butter too early inhibits gluten formation. That's why we want to get the gluten going before adding it. Now grab your scraper and mix this dough. And if the scraper is not doing the job, continue on by hand. You want to mix this in the bowl until there's no more dry flour, to avoid making a mess on the table. Now we can drop it out on the table and start kneading. This dough is quite stiff, so I'm going to use the regular kneading method. I press down and forwards with the heel of my right hand, then using the fingers of my left hand I fold the piece of dough under the heel of my right hand, then turn and repeat. Once you've done this a few times, the motion will become fluent. You want to continue doing this for 3 minutes. Now we can spread the dough out and add the butter. And as you can see, it's nice and elastic, so there's definitely some gluten going on. It is safe to add the butter now, so grab your butter, make sure it's soft. Slap it on there. And as I always say, there's no pretty way of doing this. Just use brute force to combine these two. Press it, squeeze it, mash it up. Do this for around 1 minute. Now just continue kneading, as you were before. And while it will feel super messy and sticky to begin with, don't worry, just keep at it. This is exactly how it's supposed to be. If you're making dough by hand, this is the correct way of adding fat to it. Then you can roll the dough around on the table just to pick up any stray bits and use your scraper to scrape it all together. And then keep kneading. As you can see, all the dough has become one cohesive piece. You want to knead it after adding the butter for around 3 to 4 minutes. It should become nice and smooth and not sticky anymore. And I'm happy with this. Let's get it in the bowl and take the temperature. You want it to be around 25 to 26 degrees Celsius, which is 77 to 79 Fahrenheit. Now if your dough is cooler, it will take longer to ferment. If it's warmer, it'll take less time. Same goes for your kitchen temperature, so just keep an eye on it. But I reckon 1 hour will do for the first proof, so cover it up and leave it for 1 hour. It should start puffing up a bit during this time. After the first proof, we'll give the dough a fold. Folding benefits the dough in a number of ways. You'll degas it, you'll create extra layers in the gluten structure, and will equalize the temperature. Because my kitchen is quite cool, the outside of the dough cools down, the inside stays warm. As I fold it, I equalize the temperature throughout the dough, thus giving me an even fermentation. Forming a fold is super easy. Just place your dough smooth side down on the table, flatten it out, then fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach the point where you started. Then you can flip it upside down again, so smooth side pointing up, tighten it against the table, and that's your fold done. This is also how you shape a round loaf. Now pop it back into the bowl for the second proof, cover it up, and leave it for 1 more hour. During the second proof, it should really start puffing up. But if it's not, then leave it for longer. You want to take the next step when the dough is ready, not when you're ready. But this looks about right to me, so let's shape it. Wait, Did I mention that we need a rolling pin at the beginning of this video? Because we definitely do. I do apologize, but don't attempt this without a rolling pin. Now dust your table with flour generously. Release your dough from the bowl using your scraper and pop it out on the table, smooth side down. And don't be shy with flour here, you don't want any friction. Just dust everything well. We need to roll this bad boy until it's super big and flat. Now start off with your hands and then continue on with a rolling pin. That's the easiest way. You want to roll this dough until it's like half a centimeter thick, which is 0.2 of an inch. Be patient, don't rush it. If the dough is not giving in, let it chill out for 5 minutes and then continue. You really want to roll this out big. I mean look, here's my arms for reference. Now this is looking good. Now what you want to do is turn the dough so the short end is facing you. Let's stretch it out a bit, make sure it's nice and square. Of course it's hard to get it perfect, but don't worry about it, it doesn't have to be. At this point you want to dust off any excess flour from the surface. Now grab your egg white and water glaze and brush it all over the dough. Make sure you cover the whole surface and use up all the egg white. The egg white will keep the layers from separating. Grab the cinnamon sugar and sprinkle it in a nice even layer. You want to leave 1 inch at the top of the dough exposed. We'll use that to seal up the loaf. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Now make sure everything's nice and even and you've used up all the cinnamon. Now we can start rolling. Now go slowly, don't rush. You want to make this nice and even and quite tight. As you roll it, pull it towards yourself to tighten it and make it as even as you can. The tighter you roll it, the less likely the layers are to separate. And you see the end bit, which I didn't sprinkle with the cinnamon? This will stick and seal up the loaf. Now seal this bad boy up, and at this point, you could cut this up into like 40 cinnamon buns. But we're making a cinnamon swirl loaf, so don't be tempted. As you can see, the middle of the roll is a bit fatter. That's just how it is. The way we use the rolling pin, it will always be a bit fatter in the middle. Now grab a serrated knife, ideally, and cut the ends off, but don't mess up your table. You could also leave the ends on, but I think it looks better without them. And now, cut it straight in half. Now the reason why we're doing 2 swirls is because it's physically impossible to roll the dough out so long and so narrow. So if you try to do 1 swirl, it'll never fit in the tin. But maybe I'm just clueless. You can let me know down in the comments. Or regardless, grab your dough, stick it in the tin, side by side. You can press them down a bit so they fit well. One thing to note is that I greased the tin. I don't want this sticking. These look nice and cozy in there. Now we can cover them up and leave them to ferment. Oh, and I brushed the top of the dough with butter as well. And if you're using tin with a lid, brush the lid too. And don't skimp on the butter. It'll give it a nice golden crust and a delicious flavor. Now let's leave it to ferment for 1.5 to 2 hours, or until it's doubled in size. It has to be definitely doubled in size before you bake it. During the final hour of fermentation, preheat your oven to 170 degrees Celsius with a fan on. And look at that, look how it's puffed up. It's almost to the top of the tin. Now slide on that lid and bake it for 50 minutes. This bread does take a while in the oven, but you don't want to rush it. Now 50 minutes later, take it out of the oven and slide the lid off. Reveal this beauty. But it's not ready yet. Pop it back in the oven for 10 more minutes. And if you're not sure of the doneness of your loaf, stick a probe in it. It should read above 94 degrees Celsius, which is 200 Fahrenheit. Then it's done. And let it set in the tin for around 10 minutes before removing it. And that's your swirly whirly cinnamon loaf. Pretty simple, right? But then again, I always say that. Anyway, if you have any questions or suggestions, drop them down in comments. Subscribe for more videos, and check out my channel, because I got loads more recipes, and also teach bread baking principles. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.